welcome or welcome back to the Media Club podcast. Today, our topic of discussion will be gun violence in the United States. Before we start, we're going to be going around the room and introducing our speakers for today. So we'll be saying our name, grade, school, and answering the question, if dogs wore pants, would they wear it on all four legs or on their back legs? So I'll start off. My name's Eunice. I'm a sophomore at Cypress High School, and I think if dogs were to wear pants, they should wear it on all four legs. And we'll move on to the next person.
My name's Lois. I go to Lexington junior high, and I'm in 8th grade, and I think that if dog wore pants, they would wear it on their back two legs.
Hi, I'm Kyle Min. I am a sophomore at Los Alamitos High School, and if dogs wore pants, I believe they should wear it on their back two legs.
Hi, I'm Jacob, and I'm a sophomore at Rowan High School, and then if dogs wore pants, they will wear on the back two legs.
Hi, I'm Into. I'm a sophomore at Valencia High School. If dog wore pants, they would wear it on their back two legs.
Hi, I'm Erin. I'm a sophomore at Orange Lutheran High School, and if dogs wore pants, they would wear it on their back two legs.
I'm Wu Cheng. I'm a senior in Sun Hills High School, and if dogs wear pants, I think they should wear it on their back two legs.
I'm Joseph. I go to Lexington Junior High. I'm an 8th grader, and I think that dogs would wear it on the back two legs.
All right, everybody said back two legs except me. Perfect. Okay, so we'll start right away with our first question. So has anybody had experience with gun violence or potential gun violence? So have you known anybody affected by it? Have you been personally victimized by gun violence?
I heard there was something in the junior high school near my home, but I didn't really see it. I just heard it.
So do you remember whether it was a student carrying a gun on campus or threatening or?
Yeah, I think it was a student carrying a gun on campus. I think he shot it, but didn't really hit someone. But the police came, and I think there was some issues.
Oh shoot! So did anybody ever have people that they know that experienced gun violence? I know that the Las Vegas shooting that happened last year had a lot of victims in my community. So does anybody have any other experiences with that?
Well, it wasn't really it didn't happen, but so I went to I think it happened 2 years ago. I went to the Denver High School Branding Iron game, and there was a shooting threat. I think I don't really fully remember, but everyone had to evacuate, and then it took 2 hours to clear up.
Okay, so do you remember how that was handled or no?
No, I didn't fully listen to the details.
Oh wait, I have something. So
Sure.
last year, someone posted on Snapchat that they're gonna bring a gun and shoot up Sadie's. So my school canceled Sadie's.
And Sadie's is a homecoming dance type of thing?
Yeah, but for Sadie's, the girls asked the guys.
Oh, okay. So as high school students, how would you guys feel if everyone was allowed to carry or own their guns in school? Would you feel safe going to school every day? If not, would you feel safer if you had one of your own? What do we think?
So personally, I believe that if everyone had a gun, then there would be essentially no purpose of actually using the gun. I personally believe in mutually assured destruction, MAD, which means that if you shoot me, I'll shoot you. It's kind of like a Mexican standoff kind of deal. Because if I have a gun and if you have a gun, I'm not going to knowingly shoot you because I know the repercussions will be that I will die because you shoot your gun at me.
So you're saying that we should keep guns and allow not just students but everybody to have guns because it'll be some sort of check on each other, if you kill me I kill you too.
Well, the thing is, if we're talking about students in particular, I don't think that they don't have the cognitive ability, so we're not going to hand a 13-year-old a pistol or any gun whatsoever because they don't have the cognitive ability. Their brains aren't fully developed, and they don't really have the ability to discern and to make those types of choices, and I don't think they have the responsibility to actually wield a firearm.
Okay,
so
that's an interesting
no.
point. So when do you think people are quote unquote cognitively able to handle a firearm?
Well, the thing is, I think I think we should be able to get a gun, and individuals should be able to actually purchase a firearm and have it in their possessions if they've shown responsibility, right? I don't think this comes at a certain age. I think that age is a barrier, but I don't think we can quantify this by age, right? And one example that we can give you, it's if you have a criminal record, then you are barred from getting a gun, right? It's because you did not show responsibility as a citizen.
Okay. So what do we all think? The rest of us, like, what do you guys feel about having like people carrying guns?
So, reflecting on what he said, I found that to be really interesting. That you believe that gun violence would be, I guess, it's not the age, but like the amount of responsibility you have. But what I've realized is that the vast majority of like gun violence are actually not through gun license guns, but illegally own the guns, like black market or gun shows. And I believe that I think the issue isn't licensing guns. I think it's something completely different, like a mix of both, like illegal gun transferring and maybe like bullying, as an example.
Bullying? Can you expand on that?
Like for instance, a lot of students, whenever they're shooting up a school, they're shooting up a school specifically because they harbor a lot of aggression or hatred towards a specific individual. And it's just releasing all that anger out at the school with a firearm.
Okay, so that's actually really interesting because in the status quo, there's something called a gun show loophole in which purchases from private vendors, they don't have to go through universal background checks. So that doesn't really tell you the maybe like the federal or like the state of this person's like if they broke a law or if they're not like fit to have a gun because they have a mental disorder. So like things like gun show loopholes, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking about the gun show loop when I was talking about how we can illegally earn guns.
Okay, so what do you think is a solution to that sort of loophole?
Well, one, gun shows should, instead of you not having a national background check, you should actually have a background check. Because regardless of whether if it's a gun show or not, you are still technically buying a gun. And that should follow the specific, like, laws and background checks for you to actually hold a gun.
Okay, well, let's expand on that later. So let's go back to a more general question. What do you guys think the purpose of a gun is? Let's go to some people that haven't had a chance to talk. What do you think the purpose of a gun is?
I feel like the purpose of a gun is to like protect yourself, but I feel that some people like in the U.S. like take that to an advantage and use guns to like release their anger, like Kyle said.
I think the purpose is pretty obvious. I think it's to kill people, but it shouldn't be used in like daily places. It should only be used in like specific and like special places, like in a war or like hunting, maybe something like that.
Okay, so you say that the purpose of guns is to kill people. So have you ever thought of it as like a form of defense in which you can protect yourself from others? Because in the past, when the Constitution was made and the Second Amendment, which is our right to bear arms, was written, it was primarily written because the colonists or the people were afraid of a tyrannical government because of King George. So they allowed for citizens to arm their guns or have guns so that they can protect themselves from a possible tyrannical government. So what do you think about that?
I think that's an ethical issue, because if you think killing can be the solution of everything, so like if there's a dictator and you can just kill the person to achieve peace, I don't think that's a really good solution. So I don't think killing should be the solution for everything.
So you don't think that it's a form of defense, it's just for killing?
I don't really think so.
Okay, so does anybody have any thought about that?
Well, I believe that, yes, it does have some sense of protection, like you were protecting your right, like in the amendment. But I don't think guns were made for that specific purpose. I believe it was made for warfare, or specifically killing people for the sake of warfare. And
okay, does anybody have like some sort of response to that? Because a lot of people believe that it's a form of self-defense. So we can go to Joseph.
So at its core, yes, a gun is made to kill, right? What we see is that history, like, a gun was made to more efficiently be used upon an individual or an animal or whatever in order to inflict damage, right? And maximum damage, which is death. but I think this has evolved into the Second Amendment. And going back to what the moderator said about the Second Amendment, I think that it's not violence that we're using against the tyrannical government. I think the guns actually serve as an incentive for the tyrannical government, or the government not to be tyrannical, right? Because what we see is that if the population of a certain country has guns and has the ability to actually revolt against a tyrannical leader, then the leader will not take the steps or will not actually become tyrannical, right? And so this is, I think, yes, in its core purpose, what we see is that guns are made to kill, but it has evolved into this idea and this incentive for us to actually protect our own rights and our own liberties, and I think that's what it has evolved into.
Okay, so let's move on to Inso.
Oh, yeah. I think that guns are a method of self-defense, and they, like the other, sorry, I don't know anyone's name, but before anyone is allowed to purchase a gun, all background checks should be run, and, like, although guns are a method of self-defense, like, to play devil's advocate, like, you can also, like, die from a gunshot wound, so I think we should be really careful about, like, who guns are issued to, and, like, how, like, you can, like, or, like, how they can be, like, seen, because, like we said before, like, if you take guns to, like, a school, and, like, only a couple people have them, or, like, even if everyone has them, like, it's, like, it kind of raises, like, panic or, like, alarm, so, yeah.
Aaron, what do you think about this? You've stayed silent from this.
I feel like guns are mostly for self-defense. I feel like he said, it was made for warfare, but since people realized that guns can, like, defend yourself from, like, attack from other people, they, like, changed it and made it into, like, an amendment. But I feel like people are using it for their advantage, like Lois said.
Right. Okay, so do you guys think that there's more harms or benefits of guns? Because we've talked about how they can be means to defense, or how they can be, like, used for warfare. So what do we think? Like, is it more beneficial or harmful?
So what I personally think is, I think it's actually more beneficial than actually harmful. And according to the Foundation for Economic Education, what we see is that guns have prevented an estimated 2.5 million crimes a year, and what we see is that 400,000 life-threatening violent crimes are prevented using a firearm, right? So I think in the status quo right now in modern day America, guns actually do more benefits for us and have more good properties, and so these are just empirics. But moving on to, like, the second thing I want to say, I think it's the Second Amendment that we really need to highlight, that without guns, I don't think us as a country and us as a society can be functioning in this government. I think this government would have already turned into a tyranny if we didn't have guns to actually protect our own liberties. And so I think empirically speaking, it has helped us so much, and even using the Second Amendment in this context, that it has helped us with preserving our personal liberties.
So, like, if we're talking about this in the context of maybe mass shootings and how they have been harmful to society, are you saying that the benefits outweigh the harms of, like, how many mass shootings there are per year? Because we did see an all-time high last year in the United States.
Absolutely. I'm basically saying that I'm not disagreeing that mass shootings are terrible. I do believe that mass shootings are terrible, but I think the benefits that these guns actually have are increasingly just so much bigger, and the benefits that we actually see from having guns and owning guns is just so much better.
Right, because they save, like, more lives. Okay, so what do we all think about this? Like, do you guys think it's more harmful, beneficial?
Personally, I don't agree with what Joseph said, because I think that what he said is everything he said is based on the assumption that in the United States guns are legal, but in other countries, like, guns are not legal, right? And, like, people don't have guns. So, like, actually in a society with nobody that has guns, it still functions well, and actually it's a much more peaceful place. And, like, there's much less violences and much less crimes, and So I think we should, is the best thing is to like just take the guns out of place, and I think in a society without any guns.
Okay, so you bring up a really interesting point of like, let's abolish guns. So do you think that that's the best way to decrease gun violence?
Because there's no guns. then
Okay,
there's
so
no gun
what do you think about increased knife deaths? Because just because we get rid of guns, that doesn't get rid of people's intentions to inflict harm upon people. So do you think we'll rather see an increase of maybe like knife violence?
I don't think there's a issue about gun or knife, because people like people like who people who like who are psychopaths, who are crooked people, like they kill people, and like they will do it even if like they don't have guns or knife. They'll just like hit beat them up until they're dead, or like they just like get a rope and like hang them up or something like that. They just find a
Okay.
way to kill them. It's not the issue about guns or knife. I think it's that's the issue about those people, not the guns or knives.
So that's interesting. You're saying that it won't get rid of people's intentions if we get rid of guns, and we'll still see an equal amount of death, if not more. So why should we get rid of guns then? Sorry, I kind of threw you a curveball there. Joseph, you want to add something?
Or kind of sidetracking from your question a little bit, I agree in the sense with Wuchang that what we see is that the intentions of the individual don't change. They want to harm people, they want to kill people, they want to inflict damage upon others. However, I disagree on what Wuchang said about decreased violence. What we see is that according to a Harvard study by Dr. Gary Mauser and Don B. Cates, what we see is that there's actually increased rates of crimes as soon as we get rid of guns, and this is empirically speaking. This is through a Harvard study that we're talking about, and so I disagree with the fact that we're not going to have as much crimes. We're going to actually have more crimes, but I agree that the intentions don't change.
Okay, so Inzo, did you have something to say?
Oh wait, yeah. So that the guy, yeah,
Joseph.
Yeah, Joseph. Wait, no, the
Wuchang.
yeah.
There you go.
Wu Chang said that there would like that we should get rid of guns and that like all that stuff, but I actually disagree because the majority of crimes that are like committed with guns are like illegal guns, or like guns that have been smuggled, or like guns that don't have serial numbers, or like something that so that they can't be traced back to like the owner or like whoever was like using it. So ultimately I don't think that would have any effect on like gun violence or like how many people like die from that kind of stuff, because like again the majority is like illegal guns or like stuff that can't be traced back. So
Right, so you're saying that even if we had like a law abolishing all guns, like people can still come up with guns from like smuggling or illegal methods?
well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so quick question. So if guns were abolished, do you guys think that people start making their own homemade guns perhaps?
I don't think it's just homemade guns. Because, yeah, you can make homemade guns, but it's also easier to just get the guns. Like, for instance, a really interesting thing I found is that Pennsylvania, they have a really high death count, especially towards gun violence. Even though, ironically, they have, like, smaller owner gun percentage than, like, for instance, North Dakota, but then North Dakota has like a even smaller ratio of gun violence than Pennsylvania does.
So you're saying that you see a trend in some states that like there's less gun owners and then there's more gun violence, or just violence in general?
No, it's just the fact that more guns doesn't necessarily mean more violence. So that would mean like regardless of whether if you take away guns or not, there will be violence, and it can mean that there's a lot of violence.
Okay, that's really interesting. Does anybody else have something to say?
To answer the moderator's question, I don't think it's a matter of where individuals are going to find guns or make guns or produce guns. I think it's who are actually getting guns, and I think if we have tighter restrictions on guns or even banning guns altogether, what we're going to see is that only the bad guys will have the guns. We see this with, let's say, drugs, right? No legal citizen, or no citizen that actually is law abiding and is like a good law-abiding citizen will actually use drugs and transport drugs or like sell drugs, right? What we see is that only the bad criminals do that kind of stuff, and what we see, I think, is the same thing will happen with guns. We're only going to be depriving Americans of the right to self-defense, of the right to the protection of their liberties. Instead, we're only going to see that more criminals and more bad individuals will have the guns, and only they will have the guns.
Okay, so you brought up like tighter restrictions. So like, what do you guys think? Should there be like tighter restrictions? If so, what form should they come in? Like universal background checks, like medical records? What do you guys think?
I feel that even if there were like tighter restrictions, I feel that like the people that really like have something against like people and like want to like shoot someone, I guess, will like find a way to like get a hold of gun even if like those restrictions were like made. Yeah.
Okay, so I think earlier Kyle brought up the point about gun show loopholes and how private vendors, they don't have to do any background checks, so they're able to sell it to literally anybody. Maybe it's somebody that has a mental illness that's unstable. So do you guys think that there's some sort of solution to that? Go for it.
So like I said, the guns in the gun shows don't require a like universal background check, which I believe is the solution for the gun show loophole, because like even if you were to limit someone's method of getting a gun, the gun show loop and other illegal methods will be around for you to exploit, to find loopholes around, to find like, you know, a way around the laws.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we have a universal background check, we can take away that chance. We can take away that option of a gun show loophole from happening.
Mm-hmm.
Thus, you know, reducing the amount of guns people actually have.
So you advocate not for like the abolishment or any restriction of guns, that we should maybe have universal background checks that don't apply to just like public vendors?
Yes.
Okay. So that brings up like a good question. So like, who should we be excluding from obtaining guns? Like, who are we trying to prevent from having a firearm?
I think everyone should be excluded except for the persons who are licensed. I think the point I was trying to make was that I don't like the idea of people having guns, like they can shoot people when they're threatened, because like that's kind of basically allowing someone to kill people when they're threatened by someone else. Then that's like just covering an evil by something bigger evil, right? So like I don't think that's the justice we want. I don't think that's the thing our country was made on. I don't think that's really democracy, and I don't think that's what it says in the Constitution.
So you don't think it's a democratic process to have guns?
Yeah, I don't think I just don't like the idea of that you can shoot people, you can protect yourself by shooting people like who is threatening yourself.
So then how do you feel about the government having much more developed technology than us and having like guns? Like, why should they be able to have guns and not us?
The army should have the guns, because I mean the army shouldn't be like shooting their guns to their people, right? It's for like some like emergency or like foreign war or something like that.
So you think guns should be just limited strictly to like warfare or like hunting or things like that?
Yeah, or it's
Okay.
like it's only for hunting. Some policies, yeah, some armies, yeah.
Okay, Irene, I believe you had something to say.
About like some people that are not able to have guns. I feel like people who have committed a crime or like were in prison should not have guns. Like, if it can't be like a permanent thing, maybe like have like monthly restrictions from guns from the people who like committed crimes.
So what do you mean monthly restrictions? So like people should have guns, but they should have like checkups on them every month?
Not like that, but like if they get like maybe like arrested for like a certain crime, maybe if like they have like an investigation, like they ask them if they have guns, maybe they should like restrict them for like a certain amount of time, depending on how like strong or like bad the crime is.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, that concludes our segment on gun violence. Thanks for tuning in. This was Gun Violence On from the perspective of high school students. We'll see you next time. Thank you.